I want to give you some stories this morning. All of these are true stories. Illustration number 1. There's a young cotton mill worker down in South Carolina. He had a sweet wife and a little baby. One day, on a Saturday morning, he went to town and got drunk, as he usually did on the weekend. His wife and little baby and their neighbor was sitting on the front porch talking. It was a beautiful Saturday morning. They saw him come up the street. He was staggering. She said, "You better leave. He's drunk." The neighbor left and went to her house. When he come up there, he was staggering around, and he's beginning to cuss and scream curse words at his wife. She took the baby and run in the house. And he was fussing because supper wasn't ready. He came in and chased the wife through the house under the influence of our public enemy, number 1. He picked up a piece of stove wood out the hearth and hit his wife in the head, knocked her down, knocked the baby out of her hand. He picked up that little baby under the influence of the demon of drink and took a butcher knife and sawed that baby's head off of its body. They said that man's handprint was down in the head of that little bloody head of that little baby. They began to scream, and the next day he was in jail. He sobered up and he couldn't believe what he had done. That's what they advertise on TV as cool and great and glamorous. Illustration number 2. A 12-year-old boy came home one day and found his drunk father trying to choke his mother. The young man grabbed a double-barrel shotgun and loaded it and blew his daddy's brains out and scattered them on the floor. I know a young man that happened to personally, that I went to school with. Why don't they make a commercial out of that? Why don't they show that right in the halftime at the football game of that young man, his daddy's blood and brains across the hall? Listen, they talk about drugs like it's the worst thing in the world, but for every drug addict we've got 10 alcoholics. And you say they put drugs on TV and they talk about say no to drugs, and all of that's bad and wicked, and I preach about all of that. But I'm going to tell you something. You know why they don't talk about alcohol on TV? Because the government gets the money from alcohol and the pusher gets the money off of drugs. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a scourge that's ruining our world today. Illustration number 3. A man has been drunk several days. He's fussing and cussing with his family. He picks up the baby of the family, slings it through a plate glass window. You say, how could a man do something like that? Under the influence of alcohol. It's all the mom could stand. She grabbed a pistol and shot him 6 times. He lay there in the floor, lifeless, as a result of our public enemy number 1. Illustration number 4. There's a businessman who drank heavily. It takes years for alcohol to get you. First time cocaine, you're an addict. First time meth, you're an addict. But you know why alcohol's worse? Because little by little you think it ain't bothering you. Little by little you do it every weekend. And the first thing you know, it's got its claws wrapped around your life in such a way that you can't never, ever get loose. And that man began to cuss, and he died in delirium tremors. And a nurse standing by his bedside, she said, I never ever want to see a man die who's under the influence of alcohol. She said he was screaming. He said his bed was full of snakes, and the devil was coming in his room. His eyes turned green, and then he died and went into eternity into hell. Most of the time, if a man of the house drinks, his son will drink, or his kids will drink. Kids do in excess what their parents do in moderation. And a man that says that he can take it or leave it will take it every chance he gets. They said there was a distinguished colonel at a general at a meeting one time and at a big dinner, and they come around and they were serving everybody wine. They offered him a glass, and he said, no thank you. And the lady was there in charge. She said, I can't believe that. You're a famous man. You're a great man. Why would you turn it down? And the general looked and he said, you see that boy right there? He said, that's my son. He said, if I turn it down, maybe my son will turn it down also. The same thing happened with Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth, the great baseball player, had a lot more sense and morals than these guys do now. They asked Babe Ruth one time, they said, will you make a commercial? We'll pay you a lot of money. And he said, all you have to do is advertise beer. And Babe Ruth said, there's thousands of little boys in this nation that admire me. He said, they want to grow up to be just like me. He said, I don't want their blood on my hands. And he turned them down. Listen, this sorry bunch of football players and baseball players that don't even even care about your sons and your daughters. They know what that stuff does to people. They know how it ruins lives. They know how it fills graves. They ought to be ashamed of themselves for advertising something that's the worst scourge on our country today. Amen. They said Abraham Lincoln turned it down too. And they tried to get Abraham Lincoln to drink one time, and a colonel tried to get him, or a politician said, and Abraham said, I never touched the stuff. And they said, why, Mr. Lincoln? And he said, when I was little, my mama made me promise her that I would never put alcohol to my lips. And he said, I've kept that promise, and I've made them glad. I'm glad that I did. And that politician said, I'd give $1,000 if I'd made my mama a promise like that. He said, it's got me. They made a song called Don't Let the Good Life Pass You By. They made a song called Have You Ever Saw the Funny Side of Boozing? That's how they get you kids. They make you think it's funny. Ha, ha, ha. So-and-so went out the other night and got drunk. Ha, ha. Isn't that funny? I heard they went out and boy, she puked in the back seat and we almost got caught and we had to go clean up the car. Kids think it's funny. You know why? They're not very smart in their head. Let me give you an illustration. Crash! Bang! A car accident. There's a little girl been hit. The driver staggers out of the car holding an empty liquor bottle, rolls out on the pavement. Ambulances and sirens come around. The little girl is crippled for life. Isn't that funny? Why ain't you laughing? A mother and children, illustration number 6. Look and look out the window. In a little village, they wait and wait on Daddy to come home. It's payday and they had no groceries all week. And as they're waiting on Daddy to come home, and the little kid's stomach is hurting, and Daddy don't come home at 5, and Daddy don't come home at 6, and Daddy don't come home at 7, and Daddy don't come home at 8, and it's dark. And Daddy finally staggers in. He don't have no groceries. He don't have no money. His money's down at the tavern somewhere. He's like, isn't that the most hilarious thing you've ever heard of? How funny that is. Isn't that cute? Well, those little kids go to sleep with no groceries on the table because of Daddy's alcohol problem.